edit this. So hi. I got distracted because Veronica started pooping on me right when I hit the go live button.
I thought we were practicing.
You know, I'm really good at practicing the lives. Like doing a full-blown interview beforehand and then realizing that we're live. So we'll just, I don't know, make sure we retweet out there that we're going live right now. Connor just sent out a tweet, and I know hopefully Margot will be joining us again this evening. Not on the screen, but
in the chat.
In the chat.
I wonder why I don't get updates for Integrated with Angela Erickson. Yeah, I'm subbed in, and I've got the bell icon.
Bell?
Yeah,
I don't know
either. Yep, but we are live. I just verified.
Oh, good. No, perfect. I screwed that up so bad. I need someone to do my controls. I need a Rob. I need a Rob.
Don't we all?
Oh, so what have you guys been doing today? I mean, working. Most people are working.
Yeah, just work for me. It's
same.
Yeah.
Nothing special.
It's a grind.
Yeah, we've had a rough day today. I feel like all of us are just dead. So everyone, hopefully you can bear with us. It's been a long day, I think, for all of us. But talking about pro-life stuff usually gets me pretty jazzed up and passionate, because I just don't think that there's anything more important right now than ending the slaughter of innocent children. I mean, it's like weird that that's extremist to say these days, but obviously we have a lot of work to do, especially here in Minnesota. You know, Mark, I didn't get a chance to listen to your video in its totality.
That's okay.
But I'm really hoping that as we dive more into this conversation, you'll be able to provide more insight in terms of kind of that legal perspective on what's been going on, what pro-lifers can expect. Also, John is back, my son.
Hey, John.
John, everybody says hi. Mark loves you. But it is time for you to go, bud.
The kid rules.
We don't have the bed anymore. I'm like redoing everything in my studio, hopefully. So that's why it looks a little bit under construction. We have an exercise ball in here at the moment.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
We can see that.
Yeah. Can you see that?
It is a fitness orb. It strengthens your core. Okay.
Yeah. No, totally. And super fun for the kids. I love it. They love it. But anyway, so you having some insight as our in-resident attorney.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we need you. Apparently.
I hope I'm never needed, actually. At least not in that capacity. But yeah.
I mean, I always figure I'm on some kind of a list somewhere. I'm sure I've been doing pro-life work for over a decade, and I've been extremely outspoken. So, you know, I'm probably going to have the FBI on my tail here soon too. I don't know. Highlight of Christ, good to see you. Yeah, and then Rob, you're here to just like interrogate, ask questions, be the investigator.
Anthony would have been the better choice for that, but you got me instead.
I would never get a word in probably if Anthony was on here.
It's true.
So anyway, for those of you who are maybe new to this channel or are watching this later, Rob is with Avoiding Babylon. It's a great YouTube channel. Every week they have a game called So You Think You Know the Faith. It's Rob and Anthony. It's a lot of fun, and often you'll see Mark and I joining them for that. And then Mark is one of the guys over at Tradmen. They have a really awesome podcast too. And he and Jason talk a lot about, I mean, like whatever they want, kind of. I mean,
so the show is designed. We designed the show to talk about the traditional Latin Mass, and then, but there's so many other interesting things. But we mostly focus on stuff that's going on in the church, liturgy, theology. We don't really do much like current event stuff because I feel like there's already a lot of people who do that. But our objective is to explore complicated topics from the perspective of two dumb laymen who don't have degrees in theology and ask the questions that we think lay people would ask. And that's pretty much what the show is designed to be.
Oh, Sorry about that.
And now the whole show is mine.
It's
Now
all
your show
yours.
is mine.
I had to get after my kids and tell them to get out because I have one kid playing with magnetiles and the other one's like making faces behind me. Don't worry. We're going to finally get through this. My husband came to save the day. So thank you.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so let's first talk about what is going on. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the reports about Brian Houck getting arrested by the FBI at gunpoint in front of his children. He's like facing down 11 years, if I'm not mistaken, for an incident that happened out on the sidewalk, which is absolutely insane, especially when you compare that with all the violence that has been leveled against pregnancy centers over the last few months since the Dobbs decision came down. There doesn't seem to be any indication that the FBI is investigating any of those cases. But what's interesting is that right on the heels of this incident with this Catholic husband of 7, father of 7,
who was actually cleared.
He was cleared. Cleared
yes. From the original charges.
Exactly. Well, so similar, not violent in so far as it being incidental. I mean, there were no arrests made, but the FBI all of a sudden is out asking questions of one of our sidewalk counselors. For those of you who don't know, my background in pro-life work is pretty extensive. I used to work, in college, I ran a pro-life organization on one of the most liberal college campuses in the upper Midwest, St. Cloud State University. And then when I graduated from college, I worked for Students for Life of America, and I coordinated a 5-state area. And I did everything from fundraising to on-campus outreach, doing displays and things like that, public speaking, training up students to be the next generation of pro-life leaders. And after that, I spent 2 years as an executive director at a pregnancy medical center in central Minnesota. And then I worked for LifeSite News doing development work. And in that time, I've done a pro-life radio show now for like the last 6 years. Lots of public speaking. I've just stayed involved on every level that I could. I've been offered positions to do lobbying for organizations here in Minnesota, things like that. And I have done some lobbying in some ways. But anyway, this issue has consumed the better part of my life at this point. We're getting to that point. And it's something that's that I'm really passionate about still, even though I can't be involved in the same capacity that I once was. Now I'm doing my pro-life activism at home by having a large family and raising them up in the ways that they should go, bringing them to Christ. So kind of all of that background. I also am a board member for this sidewalk counseling organization. I co-host the radio show with the president of that organization. And so it was one of our sidewalk counselors that was approached by FBI agents. 2 female FBI agents came, and this is actually more of a prayer supporter. He was kneeling in prayer when the FBI came and approached him to talk about an incident that happened months ago.
While he was also kneeling in prayer, right?
While he was kneeling in prayer, yes, they approached him. He was quite a ways away from the entrance. He was on the public sidewalk in prayer, and the FBI approached him to talk about this incident. And as far as my understanding is, there have been 2 altercations that have happened with sidewalk counselors. Hi, Kaiser Bob. Good to see you back here. But it's my understanding that the one incident that they were inquiring about, it had to do with a clinic escort coming at a prayer supporter who was holding a sign, a pro-life sign with a box cutter. And this prayer supporter that was kneeling in prayer, is my understanding, stepped out and defended this other sidewalk counselor and was trying to defend the property from being damaged. And in the process, somebody, either the clinic escort or a client, got knocked over, but they sued they charged for assault, basically, is what happened. And then when it got brought before a judge, the judge said, well, this is obviously an act of self-defense. There's no case. And so it was dismissed. So why is the FBI coming months later to inquire about this, just asking questions about this incident? And I think also, too, it's important to note why Minnesota is kind of a battleground state for abortion. It's really unique in that it's the only state in the upper Midwest with virtually no restrictions on abortion, and it has made us a destination state for many, considering that North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Iowa all now have either completely outlawed abortion or have severely restricted it. So I find it really interesting personally that the FBI is interested in people here, because they are doing it would seem to me that they're doing everything they can to protect abortion in the state of Minnesota and make sure it's as unfettered as possible, that women's access to abortion has no impediment whatsoever. What was your first thought, Rob, when you heard about this? Because you also live in Minnesota.
Well, I mean, I know the Planned Parenthood down there in St. Paul is, I mean, it's absolutely huge. It takes up almost a square city block. It's crazy. It's the size of some hospitals with, I'm sure, far less doctors. But it was interesting to me that being Minnesota, as opposed to the previous incident with Brian Houck or Hook or however you pronounce it, that was in Pennsylvania, right?
Correct. Yep.
So this is an entirely different FBI field office, different agents, different supervisors. So it would seem to me like some sort of nationwide mandate or command has gone out to all of the FBI to start investigating things like this, which is pretty scary, really. It's not just one or two agents, going on a crusade.
Right.
So I can sort of tell you here's the thing you got to understand about the FBI. The FBI can only investigate. They can only investigate federal crimes, and they can only assist in the investigation of state crimes when a state law enforcement agency requests their assistance. Mark Houck, is that right?
Mark Houck, that's right.
Is it Mark?
Brian.
Yeah.
What he's being charged with is something that there's a federal law called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, the FACE, the FACE Act. And so because this act is a federal law, it's not limited to state lines jurisdiction. And so that's why they're able to, do this in Minnesota, even though the alleged incident took place probably somewhere in Pennsylvania. But the thing is that if you go and you read, I mean, it's actually a pretty short law, and the FACE Act says by the prohibited activities are by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person because that person is or has been, or in order to intimidate such person or any other person or class of persons from obtaining or providing reproductive health services. And included in that, believe it or not, is the termination of your pregnancy, which I'm not quite sure how that's reproductive, but we'll gloss over that. And so, but the penalties for this are actually in the statute itself. And it says in the case of a first offense, be fined in accordance with this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. And in the case of a second or subsequent offense after a prior conviction under this section, be fined in accordance with this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. So in order for that second thing to take place, that second offense, he has to have been convicted of this, violating this law previously. So,
but even that second one doesn't include 11 years.
No, so I'm not sure if bodily injury results, okay, there's this little subsection of 2, except for that an offense involving exclusively a nonviolent physical obstruction, the fine shall be not more than $10,000, blah, 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 or for a subsequent offense, and except if bodily injury results, the length of imprisonment shall not be more than 10 years, and if death results, it shall be for any term of years or for life. So
this makes literally no sense.
Yeah, I don't understand how they're going to ham him up for 11 years. This sounds like just pure harassment to me, because my guess is they're probably asking around to see if they can build a case.
Yeah.
But
so I'm on the Department of Justice website.
Mm-hmm.
This is a release last Friday from the Department of Justice, and it says, if convicted of the offenses, Houck faces up to a maximum of 11 years in prison 3 years of supervised release, and fines of up to $350,000.
Then he's gotta be charged with something else. But here's the thing: I can't think of what other federal crime.
It
You
says
could've-
there is a 2-count indictment
Okay.
of. So he's alleged to have twice assaulted this man. So they're charging with 2 counts of assaulting a reproductive health care clinic escort.
Yeah, but I mean, they still wouldn't be. Both of these would be his first offense. Anthony, I see you in the chat. The reason we didn't invite you on is because Italy is not really a country.
Therefore, you're not really a person.
And so we unpersoned you, bro. It happens.
Oh, funny.
That's so funny, right at the same time. Well, and so the other thing that is, kind of bouncing off of that. So there's, how are they going? Are they working on building a case? Is that what you're speculating then right now? Is that they're working on building a case around something? Because it does. Here's the thing: is like you have an old woman canvassing for pro-life stuff, an old woman who gets shot in the back by some Democratic fanatic just a few days ago as well, and he's not even in jail.
No, and he admitted to it, right?
And he admitted to it. Yes. Like how nothing.
And here's the
makes
thing.
sense.
And here's the thing. That also is a violation of the FACE Act. Section 2 of prohibited acts of that act says by prohibited action by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with, or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship, or intentionally damages or destroys the property of a facility or attempts to do so, or destroys the property or place of religious worship. So that's what that individual did is actually the violation of the FACE Act, not what Mark Houck is accused of doing, if that is what the indictment is about. And the thing is, federal indictments are sealed. So we don't get to look at what the actual indictment is so that I can tell you, but my guess is that, and because fighting on the sidewalk, is most likely a state crime. There's no federal crime for fighting on the sidewalk.
Right.
So,
no, I mean, is the FBI really that bored right now? We don't have enough going on right now for them.
Well, it has been reported that they're taking agents off of child abuse cases to prosecute and investigate things like this. So,
and I would think that typically speaking, they would have all this investigation and everything wrapped up before they did the arrest. Because one thing I can tell you about federal prosecutors is if you get charged in federal court, man, you better cut a deal because they got you. These federal prosecutors are no joke. They know what they're doing, and they don't take it to trial unless they got your butt on tape doing what they said you did.
So do you think then there's something maybe more to the story that we're just not getting? Because, okay, if I'm going to be totally honest, and this is just how I operate. When I hear very sensational news, I do not feel a rush to go out and make a statement on it. Like I think that's really common today. It's really easy too when you have social media right in your pocket. Sure. So when this Mark Houck situation started being reported on, I didn't say anything. And I think some people would maybe question why I wouldn't or whatever, but it's like, sometimes there is more to the story that you're not getting in those initial reports. And so I kind of wanted to wait it out. And the reason why I basically broke the story on this FBI situation down in St. Paul was because I know these people personally. I don't know the sidewalk counselor personally, but he is one of our own. I've been out on that sidewalk. I know, I work with the president of the organization. I'm intimately involved in the work that is going on there. I've done sidewalk counseling down there. I know their training, everything. And it blows my mind. In my mind, there is nothing that this individual could have done to warrant an FBI inquisition. To have two, and they didn't disclose right away that they were FBI either. These two female FBI agents came and approached this gentleman and started asking questions. And it took some time before it was ascertained that they were FBI. So, I mean, there are just things about it that seem so so sketchy. Like and that's maybe not like the best technical language, but it's so
No, yeah.
unsettling.
There could be more to it than we know, but one of the things that I keep thinking back to is, and I know this is the dumbest thing to like spark my tinfoil hatness, but when the MyPillow guy got raided, I was like, the MyPillow guy is in on the conspiracy? Like, really? Like, he's part of the Russia, like the Russia
He's
got
from
to
Minnesota
the MyPillow
too.
guy?
Yeah, he's from Minnesota
He's
too.
Minnesotan.
So the Russians
so
are hiding
dangerous
messages.
here.
They're hiding disinformation in your pillows. Like, I was like, come on, this is clearly just so once I saw that, I was like, okay, they're just out to get us. Like, okay, that
did you see the Babylon Bee video about that? It's pretty good. Oh, you have to look up the Babylon Bee video about the FBI and the MyPillow guy. Yeah. This is how they sleep at night now. Doing the work that they do. It's so good. It was so good.
But I mean, we can look at the past and see, in the 1960s, the FBI was in charge of a program called COINTELPRO, where they were spying on Martin Luther King Jr., other pro-civil rights activists, anybody that they deemed were leftist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for all you lefties who are listening to this, that the FBI would just never do something like that. Well, they've done it to you. So don't act like they wouldn't do it to somebody else. I always say, don't ask people to do things you're not willing to do yourself. And so I know the history of, and it was like I said on my video last night, I'm very pro law enforcement. My dad was a law enforcement officer and I come from that family. But if we deny powerful institutions if we don't conduct our oversight and we just trust everything they do, we make a fundamental denial about our fallen human nature. Mm-hmm. And we're saying that, well, that fallen human nature, that just doesn't apply to us. And that's where human rights abuses start.
Well, and it's been interesting because when all these different outlets were reaching out to me yesterday morning for information on the story and wanting to do interviews and stuff with our president, there is this tendency within journalism, even the people you like, to try and sensationalize things more than they need to. And that was like kind of one criticism that our president had. His name's Brian Gibson. That's why I had Brian in my brain, by the way. But Brian was kind of saying like, oh, he felt like some of them were trying to over sensationalize the story. And in my mind, I'm going, it's pretty sensational in and of itself. Like, what do you need to add to it? I mean, yes, this sidewalk counselor wasn't arrested, thank God, but it is unsettling because of the power dynamics. We talk about this all the time. Women talk about it all the time. And all the movements against the patriarchy and stuff, and within the workplace, there are power dynamics at play. And so no one can, you shouldn't pretend like the FBI, if the FBI is coming to question you, there's no doubt that there's a power dynamic there, and it is meant to intimidate no matter what. And you have good, hardworking citizens who are doing good work, prayerful, like charitable work, and they're intimidating them. But these people can get away with literally burning down the city for 2 years, and no one, mom's the word. We're just going to completely gloss over the fact that we had people literally burning down Minneapolis and St. Paul for 2 years with the BLM riots, and that's not a problem. We're just going to give more money to that. But we're going to come after the guy kneeling on the sidewalk in prayer outside of an abortion facility. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Rob?
I think a lot of people don't realize is one of the major missions of the FBI since its founding has always been counterintelligence. So in like Britain, you have MI6 and MI5. MI6 is spying on other nations, and MI5 is spying on the spies
on the
Britain.
Irish.
Largely, yeah, well, you're exactly right, because they were an enemy of the nation, according to them, right? So in America, you have the CIA spies on other nations, and the FBI spies on the U.S. to catch spies and enemies of the state. So I think we just need to accept we've been reclassified as enemies of the state.
Well, I mean, it would certainly appear so. I mean, I think the president has said as much, and the rhetoric that comes out of the Democratic Party seems to, I mean, I've never come across, for example, a virus that only works if you believe in it. I mean, that was very
about it's very dangerous when you're standing up, but when you sit down in a restaurant after the standing part, it just kind of dissipates.
And
there's a force field.
One of the things that I learned during coronavirus is Americans over the years, and I don't know exactly when it happened. My guess is it starts at 9/11, but who knows? I mean, I'll leave it to smarter people to figure out when it started. But we associate the safety can only be purchased at the price of freedom. And so anything you can do to remove just a little bit of freedom makes you that much safer. So like when you would go to a grocery store during coronavirus and you had two doors next to each other and one door was the entrance and one door is the exit, and you'd have a person there with a mask saying you can only go in this door and only go out this door. And if you try to do it the other way, we won't let you in the store because you're a safety threat. That obviously is not based in science. There's nothing scientific about that, but people feel safer because now they're a little less free to do what they want. Mm-hmm. So they're a little bit safer. And it apparently is the case nowadays that there is no limit to what the average American will tolerate for the illusion of safety. And that is very depressing. And I have not been a particularly optimistic person since the summer of 2020 about the future of our institutions or of our civilization.
And I want to say to Brick here too, I got COVID really bad too. I almost had to be hospitalized. I got really bad pneumonia. The reason I wasn't hospitalized was because my practitioner was actually nervous that they wouldn't treat me because there was no protocol for pregnant women for treatment. So basically I was like on the verge of, I don't know. I don't want to say dying, but I've never been that sick before in my life either. So no,
I got it too. Yeah,
COVID was very serious for me. I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness, especially if you're immune compromised, which you are, and I am too.
But there were things I felt that we did that made it worse. For example, the idea that everybody has got to wear a mask. I think
there were
in some
things
places,
that weren't scientific at all.
In some places, a good idea, but like in court, okay, where we don't wear, when we're not wearing a mask, we can communicate across the room because I can see your lips move. But when you're wearing a mask, I got to get right here so I can hear you, which makes the opportunity to spread COVID-19 infinitely more likely.
Right.
And just things like that we did that were weird. I think in Brazil, they banned short sleeve t-shirts because that was a coronavirus measure.
Interesting.
Bizarre.
Well, it is interesting to see and a lot of us called it from the beginning, right? Like this would be kind of the catalyst for these institutions stealing so much power from the people. And that's why, we're talking about these situations with the FBI scoping out pro-lifers. That's why it's concerning. I mean, I think there's a part of me that's like, are we kind of over exaggerating this? I don't know. I would be more on the side of being overly cautious than being negligent when it comes to having an awareness about what is going on with our intelligence communities, because the second you stop paying attention, the second you let your guard down is the second they steal power.
Yeah. One of the questions that I've been wondering about with the Mark Houck situation is, it's been said by his attorneys that he volunteered to be detained months prior to this, and they declined, and then showed up at 7 a.m. with multiple agents to arrest him. Yeah. Is there any reason for something like that, Mark?
Yeah,
I mean, what is the reason other than intimidation?
The reason for that is federal law enforcement very rarely gets to break out all their tactical toys. I mean, the Waco raid in 96 was a very similar situation. As crazy as the Branch Davidians were, the sheriff in the town had been up to that compound many times. And his whole deal is, if you want to execute a warrant, just take me out there with you. You just walk up and knock on the front door and they'll execute the warrant. But the FBI had convinced themselves that the second we show up, there's going to be a gunfight. So it's better that gunfight start with us. And so they got their MP5s and their bulletproof vests and and they look tactical. I mean, they love to do that stuff. That's a federal law enforcement deal, because for the most part, they don't get to do that. Most federal crimes are white collar in nature. You don't get to break out the tactical clothes. There's not that many international drug traffickers in the world. that honestly and truthfully, and I'm sure at some higher level,
but like what
it is orchestrated to intimidate. There's political reasons behind it, I'm sure. But
well, and I think about going back to what I talked about when we first got started with this live, why Minnesota is such an important battleground. I think a lot of people around the country feel comfortable now that the Dobbs decision came down. They may live in a state where abortion has been severely restricted or what have you, but we've gone the opposite direction here.
Mm-hmm.
Our tax dollars do pay for abortions here. We do have in our Constitution a so-called right to abortion that is constitutionally protected here, but we did have some safeguards in place up until quite recently. So, for example, there were laws for informed consent. So women had to be notified of all of the fetal development, things like that, when they went in to procure an abortion. They would get informed consent. They would have to understand what stage of development their child was at, what the procedure was going to be like, all of that information. Because obviously, depending on how far along the woman is, it's going to determine the type of procedure she undergoes for that abortion. Here in the state of Minnesota, abortion is legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. But abortionists in a freestanding clinic like Planned Parenthood, they don't perform past usually 24 weeks. If you go later, they will perform them in a hospital setting.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that was in place was parental notification laws. So if a 14-year-old girl needed to procure an abortion claimed she needed an abortion for whatever reason, her parents would have to be notified, like any minor notification from 14 to 18. And that prevented a lot of abortions, because when parents found out that their child was pregnant, many of them stepped up to support their child
Mm-hmm.
and their grandchild. But now that has been done away with. There was a lawsuit levied by an organization called Gender Justice a couple of years ago. And right after the Dobbs decision came down, our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, who pretty much promised before he started his tenure that he would not uphold any pro-life law, he basically he sandbagged the case. So when Gender Justice came back with this law saying we want all of the pro-life laws on the books repealed, including informed consent, parental notification, there were others too. I'm just not thinking of them off the top of my head. Oh, yeah, the clinics here are not licensed and inspected, so that's not a problem. Oh, having a doctor perform abortions, that's been now since AG Ellison sandbagged the case. Now anyone, any sort of medical professional can perform an abortion, and not in just a hospital setting, but it can be in a freestanding clinic. And so you're seeing these safety measures that were in place for women. I mean, you don't see pregnancy centers being visited by ambulances. You do, however, see mega Planned Parenthood down in St. Paul on Vandalia having an ambulance come to it occasionally because a woman is hemorrhaging or what have you. That's just the reality. And you know what? They're not licensed and inspected. In fact, you see more regulations in nail salons than you do in abortion clinics. And so it's just really fascinating to see the FBI coming out trying to intimidate people who are offering help. I mean, there's a lovely pregnancy medical center just a couple of blocks away from that Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
And they are helping women who are getting redirected from Planned Parenthood all the time. That Planned Parenthood down there has the highest volume of abortion clients in the country. It's like the third biggest facility in the country, maybe. I'm not sure. Over the last several years, Planned Parenthoods have had to consolidate quite a bit because of restrictions, but for quite some time it was about the third largest, and it's my understanding that is probably the highest volume of abortions. And so they're killing on average, like, I don't know, a child every hour here in Minnesota.
Wow.
It's actually slightly higher than that, but think about that. Every hour at least one child is dying.
That's
And that's just our state.
That is a sobering and arresting statistic, to say the least.
It is. Yep. It is. It's horrific. And like, this is somehow the pro-lifers, the ones who are offering options. They're out there, the woman's last chance. I mean, I used to have kind of mixed feelings about sidewalk counselors, because I sort of was like, I could see them being aggressive or what have you, towards
Tensions
women.
can run high, and
I mean,
things could get out of hand. Yeah,
I could see why some people would say that they're there shaming women or whatever. And now, having actually been out on the sidewalk, I can say that's actually just categorically not true. I mean, there are some weird figures from time to time. I won't lie. There are some weird people out there.
Sure.
But the people who are out there dedicated sidewalk counseling are often very prayerful, and they're just telling women, like, you have options. That's it. There's a pregnancy center that's going to help you. And I think a lot of these women, they're going because they think there's no hope. They think that there is no choice. They're not being given a choice. And organizations like Planned Parenthood are notorious for not reporting statutory rape, for not reporting pimps bringing the women that they're trafficking into their clinics repeatedly over and over and over again for their multiple abortions. I mean, Minnesota also is a huge sex trafficking state.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't know that, because Minnesota, there's the Nordic aesthetic with the blonde hair and blue eyes that get trafficked a lot. And we actually have we're one of the only states that has we might be the only, where we are the only one in the middle of the country that has an open waterway through the Great Lakes down to the ocean.
Duluth is one of the largest trafficking hubs in the country.
And people don't know that. And these industries work together to exploit women in need. And here we're leaving these women more vulnerable than ever. And the FBI is concerned about a sidewalk counselor praying.
Well, the FBI, the left has convinced themselves that they have convinced themselves that what happened on January 6th was basically almost the overthrow of the United States government.
January 6th. I was listening to Michael Knowles talk.
I mean, it's very strange because they felt no such thing when they were burning the courthouse in Portland and all these other things, but they I mean, it was kind of strange because we've been told for the last 4 or 5 years that all our institutions were systemically racist and evil until they won the institution in November, and now all of a sudden they were sacred again. I mean, that was our democracy that was at stake.
Well, don't you know, democracy dies in darkness? So,
but one of the things I've also noticed is that they no longer they don't see the hypocrisy.
No.
They don't see how me saying I can do anything I want to you, but you're not allowed to do anything to me. They don't see how that's hypocrisy at all. They'd simply
because there's a moral superiority there. I mean, it was like the same thing with
saving the world. You got to
people
understand.
Out in public berating anyone who didn't fall in line with the COVID stuff. It's like we keep going back to the COVID stuff, but I mean, it was like if you weren't wearing your mask somewhere, you'd have some crazy Karen screaming at you. Yeah. I mean, that was not uncommon. That was not an uncommon experience, but they were more than happy to the My Body, My Choice crowd is more than happy to force everyone to get the jab. I mean, it's like people saying that you should have your children taken away from you if you're not getting the jab, or worse, losing your job, not being able to go out in public and do basic things like get groceries. And yet, and now all the science is coming out validating everything that every skeptic has been saying for the last 2 years. But there's
even some of the stuff I thought was crazy 2 years ago. It's like, oh, they were right.
Well,
it was humbling, wasn't it? When
Barack Obama was elected, the consensus was we won the culture war. We won, you guys lost. We won the culture war. It's over. And then the idea came around that, people in powerful elite institutions will select our leaders. That's safer. They've been to Harvard. They're much more sophisticated and erudite than the rest of us. And so it was worked out that, because remember, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win she was going to be the 2008 Democratic candidate.
Oh, it was a
And
given.
then Barack Obama came around. Well, the deal was, okay, I'll tell you what, you let Barack Obama have this now because we need to win this, and he's universally lovable, and then we'll give you the presidency in 2016. And they had decided that, and they had really believed amongst themselves that they decide who the president will be, not the unwashed masses. They didn't even go to Harvard. You can't expect them to make these kind of decisions.
It's very aristocratic.
And so when the unwashed masses took that away from them, they got really, really, really angry. And it's not about left or right politics. Not really. It's about, they had convinced themselves that they are the ones who picked the president, not the unwashed masses. And if you can believe it, in their minds, that's called democracy.
Well, because for them,
so they're not wrong when they say we're a threat to democracy. You just have to understand how they're defining the word.
Well, and for like a normal person, the means don't justify the end. But in this case, I think we do live in a time where a lot of people really do believe that means justify ends.
Yeah.
That anything, as long as there's a greater good that will be brought about, and we see that on a global scale now.
Yeah.
We see this within the church. We see this globalism that's occurring, and this attempt to marry socialism with all this other stuff because it's about the common good, right? And so it makes sense that you all the way from the top down, it doesn't matter because means can justify anything as long as the end is good and for the betterment of the people and for bringing about this new world order, this new social order, and at the expense of your working class, at the expense of like a common sense human being
and here's
that is looking at this and saying,
and here's my big question about that is, in the case of saying, for example, lying about people. Well, I have a right to lie. It's for the greater good. Well, if you have to figure out the small goods before you can get to the big goods, right? And how is it possible that these people are going to lead us to the social utopia that no one else has been able to do for 7,000 years of human existence, or however long we've been on this planet, when they can't even reach moral conclusions that a 9-year-old can reach? They can't figure out the smaller goods first. And by the way, there is no greater good than the truth. Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So if you're saying, well, I lied for the greater good, you're saying there's somebody better than Jesus Christ. And I don't know how to break this to you, but no, there isn't.
Well, and he also said, he reminds us that he who is faithful in small things is faithful in big things, right?
Yeah.
And so we know that as a basic fundamental principle, the means do not justify the ends. There has to be, and there can be instances where double effect can take place when it is warranted, things like that. Going back to the abortion issue, when an embryo implants in the wrong place, doing a salpingectomy or some other sort of medical procedure to remove the affected tissue, like a fallopian tube, if the embryo implanted there, the intention isn't to kill the child. The intention is really to save the life of the mother. And in like the truest sense, I'm not talking about women claiming that their mental health is going off the rails and then they'll kill themselves if they're pregnant,
Sure.
But really their lives are truly at risk. And so, we have to make those distinctions sometimes, but that's where discernment is so important. And you look at the way that the powers that be are just taking more and more power from themselves, from the little guy. And it's like, you have to be hyper vigilant. I really feel like we have to be so vigilant right now because so much has been taken from us for the last couple of years under this administration, especially, but there's no lying either. I mean, it did somewhat start under the Trump administration. And I think we have to be really honest about that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I have found just to be totally fair, that I found creepy in some senses is the Trump personality cult.
Savior complex.
The personality cult is a little creepy. Given our value system that we seem to have in this country, I see how that could absolutely be taken in horrifying directions. What I'm worried about is not really so much who wins the White House from one administration to the next, because our government is a human institution. It will one day pass from this earth like dried leaves. Okay. But what I do worry about is our value system seems to be really okay with some incredibly dark and dangerous things that, okay. So I read a book about the 1994 Rwandan genocide. And this guy goes around Rwanda and he talks to survivors and perpetrators. And one of the things that I seemed to get by listening to these people talk is Rwanda, for years leading up to 1994, had become a place of just crass commercialism. People began to just not be very good to one another. And you would hear this from Rwandans. It'd be like Rwandans just became awful people. And they say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I don't know. We weren't very good to one another. We lost our sense of common humanity. And we did that way before 1994. It started about 3 or 4 years before that, or maybe 5 or 6 years. Well, I see us getting to a place where something, I mean, God forbid something like that would happen anywhere. But we're strangely comfortable with death. Life is very cheap here. And it's just, like I said, I don't have a lot of optimism right now. So maybe somebody else wants to come in and cheer us all up.
I mean, I think it's a really interesting thought experiment because, I mean, you look at just the COVID thing. And it was exacerbated by the fact that we live in a completely virtual world to begin with. We started isolating ourselves from one another for a long time ago. Once we had the internet in our pockets, we live a lot of our lives on the screen. I mean, that's what all of us do here, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's Anthony.
Oh no!
No.
There he is.
This is too good of a conversation.
Hey, Anthony.
It was good.
I'm supposed to be sleeping right now. I have to go to work at 2
He's so
o'clock.
excited.
No,
he's so excited.
Mark started touching on Rwanda. And
are you from Rwanda?
No, not from Rwanda.
I'm kidding.
Just
Rwanda's a real country, actually.
No, listen.
The Rwandans are a real ethnic group. They're real people.
Steven says he's leaving now. No, don't leave.
No.
Steven, look, we got rid of him. You can stay.
I'm putting my light on. Hold on.
Please
Angela, before we get on to another topic, what you just said is also another thing that scares the crap out of the power bases, is because for years, if you wanted to get into media, you had to go through them. They controlled the networks. They control everything. Now, anybody who's having interesting conversations is doing it on
People
a
can check
podcast.
in.
Conan O'Brien's only on his podcast now. He's not on network TV.
Yeah.
The only people on network TV are The View.
Well, like, look at all the people who have totally bombed. Who was it? Who recently just totally bombed? Was it Hillary and her daughter or something?
No,
yeah.
Michelle Obama and Barack Obama got taken off of
somebody.
The
was
big
it CNN?
one that Joe Rogan's on. What's it called?
Spotify?
Yeah, they got rid of them on Spotify.
Because they don't have anything interesting to say.
No, they have nothing.
They've never
had
to.
They wanted to have they didn't want to actually be on the show. They wanted to have other people do it, and they wanted to take the $1 billion contract from Spotify.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Michelle Obama's just not interesting.
Well, she's
just not, like, the four of us are more interesting than any of them.
They don't understand this media. This media is too grassroots. It's too accessible to the average. Look at
it's hard to control. I mean, that's why
hard to control.
It's hard to control when you have so many voices. I mean,
bingo.
It's so interesting because even with this new prime minister from Italy, from that non-existent country that Anthony still happens to have ancestors from, but. I mean, they took that video off of her speech. Did you see that on YouTube? They took it off, and then they had to put it back on
because it's
so many people. So many people were like, "Obviously, this is censorship." I have to tell you, I was talking to somebody from my parish who's Russian. She's from Russia. She married an American and lives here, and she's Russian Orthodox. But she comes to mass every Sunday with her husband. And I got to talk to her for the first time just a couple of weeks ago, and she said, what you guys see on the media is nothing like reality outside of America. She goes,
Yeah.
America is not, they're like a third world country compared to some of the advancements and developments that are happening in other countries like Russia, for example, or China, or some of these other places that we generally talk very poorly about. But she said it's unbelievable the difference in terms of what you have in terms of technology there versus here, for example. And we're constantly told that these countries, they're way behind us, we're the leader, all this stuff. And it made me sit there and go, I don't know how I feel about, like, do I have to reassess, because I don't believe anything else that I'm seeing or reading from mass media or from the government is everything that I've been told a lie.
Okay, but do you know this about other countries though? So okay, I'll take the story from the kid from Stranger Things, the black kid in Stranger Things. The other day comes out and
he has a
says,
name.
I don't know his name though. I'm not that big of a fan. My kids watch it. I watched it. I just forgot his name. But so the kid has less followers on Instagram than the other people. Okay. He has 15.5 million. This kid's a millionaire. He's got 15.5 million followers on Instagram, and he's talking to the magazine and he's saying, you know, the racism is just blatant because I'm a character on the show. Why do I have less followers? And the thing is, if you continue reading, he has less followers because of other countries, not because of his American audience. Because in reality, America is not anything like China is very racist.
Oh,
Japan
yeah.
is very racist. Like, so when you step outside
Japan,
the boundaries
especially.
we're so used to, like, the people who live in this country are so spoiled that we, like, this victim mentality has just taken so hold that it's crippling people. I mean,
so I'm just thinking, because on the topic of tonight, people would say, well, you pro-lifers maybe are taking a victim mentality. These people are probably doing really bad stuff that you don't know about.
No, it's a different thing to recognize that the government is treating people differently under the law, right?
Genuinely,
genuinely treating people. I mean, the FBI has been weaponized at this point. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you.
When you see the government actually
it's
taking,
blatant.
So look at it this way. Okay, the people that firebombed in New York, that firebombed a cop car, got off on a 24-month sentence. Where the guy on January 6th who just trespassed in the building got 7 years. You're talking about somebody who threw a Molotov cocktail into a cop car, got 2 years, and a guy who went into the Capitol with a flag waving around like an idiot got 7 years. I mean, this is insane, right? Because they're trying to say that, you really going to tell me that January 6th was a coup attempt?
No, but it doesn't matter. They've convinced themselves of that so badly.
It was a riot. The most it was a riot. Like, it got out of control. It got a little rowdy.
Rob, when is the last time you drove through, like, Minneapolis?
The last time I was really in Minneapolis was last March, so March of 2021.
Okay, so if you are, I mean, Minneapolis got completely obliterated. I mean, there was a George Floyd memorial. Obviously, there was like a sacred ground you couldn't pass for a long time. You couldn't go through a certain intersection for a long time because it was barricaded by these BLM protesters. I mean, you had buildings on fire. Everything was completely being destroyed. Interstates being shut down. It was literally a no-go zone. It was
one of my favorite parts of Minneapolis was Uptown. You know, it was a fun place to go, you know, hang out with friends or go grab some drinks. And there's entire blocks of Uptown that were burnt. I mean,
you don't want to go to Minneapolis anymore, and which is sad because the nearest FSSP is in Minneapolis. But I mean, it's like you're going into the ghetto.
People don't remember how wild 2020 was.
No, I mean,
I'll never forget
wild 2020.
The news cycle is super fast, and because we're constantly plugged in,
people have bird brains.
It's easy to forget. Yeah,
it's
even your brain can't retain that much information for that long. Like, you physically can't.
$5 gas was 2 weeks ago. $5 gas. It'll come down to under $4. And at the time of the midterms, people will forget we were paying $130 to fill a medium-sized SUV because it'll go down for that. And as soon as those midterms are over, gas prices are going to shoot right back up.
So here's the thing that I find so interesting about these FBI situations here over the last couple of weeks. Or, you know, like pro-lifers being shot doing canvassing, old ladies being shot doing canvassing efforts and things like that. And I just keep thinking, it's really been amazing to me how brash and brazen these government institutions have been, even leading up to the election cycle. I mean, it hasn't felt to me like they're dying down, kind of waiting it out until you get past election season and then just ramping it right back up into just sheer chaos again. It feels to me like they're not even concerned about losing. And why is that? Why
Yeah,
are they
I-
not really? I mean, on a state level, there is some fear, I think.
Yeah,
but
I think local elections are still hard to pull off what they did in 2020.
What do you think, Rob? You were
for the
about to
big
say
one.
something.
I think the big one is. I'm sorry. Yeah, I cut you off.
I was just going to say there's two reasons they don't care. One, they have something figured out to pull another 2020, right? And two, what's infuriated me the most is not so much what the FBI is doing; it's that half the country does not care one bit.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
they don't.
We
They don't
literally
even see
one
it.
bit.
They don't see it.
We have the intelligence agencies picking the president.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what's going on now. The intelligence agencies are now controlling elections.
So I have a thought that could save us all, the entire country, a lot. Because the way things are now, no matter who wins, we're going to have a riot. Because if you think that if Trump would have won instead of Biden, they wouldn't have stormed the Capitol on January 6th.
Oh,
Give me a break.
it would have been a real coup.
Wait
It
a
would have
minute.
gotten
Wait a minute.
real, right?
What about the year Trump got elected?
Yeah. Okay.
Think about the women's march. Think about they did 1,000 times more damage to the Capitol than January 6th.
Here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. We're going to have to start getting serious about our presidential and congressional elections. We need to do away with mail-in ballots, do away with early voting. Election day is on election day.
That'll never happen.
Because the problem is that
again.
The problem
mail-in
is that
ballots.
people need to be able to trust the process, and nobody trusts the process because the process is too porous. It's too ripe for fraud. There's no way to keep track of it, so that no matter who wins or who loses, we're going to have a riot. That's not a sustainable business model, as we say.
In my whole life,
Not
the
funny.
only election I remember that people actually trusted for the most part was Clinton's second election. I mean, ever since then, there's been
shady stuff going on,
or accusations of such, right?
Yeah.
And half the country not fully believing it was valid.
Well,
Okay, so then the next question for me, anyway, Anthony, I'm going to cut you off.
Go ahead. I deserve it.
Yes.
So how, like, a show of hands, how many of you think we might be on the cusp of like a civil war?
Now, here's a question: Civil War or World War comes first? Which one?
Oh,
Think about what's going on in Russia right now.
yeah.
Think about how
that pipeline that
is
just
trying.
got cut.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but just think about how nobody's trying to de-escalate. Nobody.
The closer a civil war gets, the more likely World War is going to happen because
they will.
Unite us. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, they need an event to get us to unite. But I think they're trying to cause civil war in the country intentionally. They're trying to divide and conquer, right? So there's two things going on. Either they're trying to divide and conquer where things get so bad between. So you were talking about Rwanda. That's why I jumped on. We're at a place of visceral, like they had in Rwanda before the genocide.
Yeah.
Where the Hutus and the Tutsis were they hated each other so much, they were willing to kill each other. And I see that in this country where left and right are as long as we're fighting with each other, none of us look at the real culprit, which is the people pulling the strings right now, right? So they keep us at war with each other. Now, if they can divide us enough where civil strife does break out, they could do away with the Constitution.
Okay, but here's a good point too that Stephen is bringing up is like the people actually in the military right now. I wouldn't say we have the strongest military we've ever had.
No, but we do.
How do we account for that? Is it just that we're just going to rely mostly on the intelligence community, or what are we going to do?
I mean, the entire military's been systemically redesigned since the fall of since the fall of the Soviet Union. It's gone so computerized, so mechanized that it doesn't matter if the person sitting behind the desk controlling the drone is some soy boy tranny. It doesn't matter. He's got missiles at his fingertips.
You got a strike on your channel for that one. You can't say that. You can't say that. You can't say the T word.
Hopefully I'm small enough that no one will notice.
No, you can say you can talk about a transmission of a car that way, I think, but if that gets flagged, but no, I'm worried about
drones have those? That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, so I'm worried about in the foreign escalation that nobody is trying to de-escalate.
Right.
Okay, so America's not trying to do peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. No. They are egging this thing on. Now there's suspicion that we are the ones who bombed the pipeline. It's just this is not going. Do you think Russia is not going to drop a nuke if they feel cornered enough? Of course they will.
It's estimated only a quarter of their nuclear force is currently usable, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, but they're not going to drop a megaton. They're going to drop a kiloton nuke, a strategic nuke in
tactical.
Tactical nuke in Ukraine, or on the Baltic pipeline that they just opened up after theirs was blown up. They have another one coming in, so Europe now has free gas, going that way. But listen, I'm going to step out now that Connor came in because I have to go to bed desperately, and you guys have another voice. I was so interested. This conversation is riveting. You guys are doing an amazing job.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, I had to get on. You guys are amazing, man. I wish I could stay the whole time.
Love you, brother. Be careful.
Get some sleep.
I will. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow, man. See you later.
Bye, Anthony.
Oh, I almost ended the broadcast like Jason.
Please don't. I struggle enough as it is with something as basic as StreamYard. Please don't.
I'm good. I'll get out. I'll see you guys.
See ya.
I hope Anthony keeps that beard. He looks good with it.
I said in the comments, I don't know if you noticed, but really, Angela, you should try and get on to Timcast IRL. I feel like with all the pro-life stuff going on, he might be interested in having you on.
Well, hey, if anyone wants to hit him up, maybe I will too. But yeah, that's a great
Everyone
idea.
should at Tim Pool on Twitter to get Angela on Timcast IRL. And what's the producer's name? Lydia. Everyone should at Lydia and Tim Pool and see if we can get Angela on, because this kind of topic is right up their alley. That's why and Timcast IRL is going on right now. So you guys are literally just doing Timcast IRL
stuff.
but Catholic.
So I love talking about this stuff, and I'm grateful that you guys are joining us tonight for this, because sometimes I think you can feel a little crazy, all these things kind of percolating in your brain and feeling like maybe you're the only one thinking these things. You're not. And I think, how does this maybe even relate to living an integrated life with my podcast? Because I like to try and stay on my mission, but of course the pro-life stuff I'm really passionate about. But two, I think I'm all about living in reality right now, and this is our reality right now. We have to be really honest about what's going on, and I think we need to be realistic. I am a cup half full kind of person, generally speaking, but it is I try to be realistic about things, and I think where we're at right now is extremely concerning in a secular sense in the church, and so thank you guys for joining us tonight to talk about this, because I think we have quite a road ahead of us right now as a country, and as Catholics, we have to be warriors for everything, for our families. We have to protect our families, but we also have a nation to defend too, just from all this stuff going on. So anyway, thanks for joining us. I just wanted to make sure I said that. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Connor, for jumping on.
And I would say that Christ provides the answer to how we deal with this, because really I've often, even in times when I wasn't religious, because I used to just not be religious at all, I've always been, even in my times when I wasn't religious, this tremendous admirer of Jesus of Nazareth as a person, because his life is illustrative of if one thing, if nothing else, that when he's hanging on the cross, this is the worst they can do to you. What are they going to do? This is the worst they can do to you. And then in 3 days, I mean, obviously when I wasn't religious, I wasn't thinking about the resurrection, but as a religious Catholic now, I mean, that's the worst they can do to you is death. And I conquered that. That's done. Now what do they got? Because thanks to Christ, the worst thing they had is gone. I mean, they could kill us, but we're going to rise again on the last day. So, and I take great comfort in that in times when I feel, because I'm going to tell you something. I have no faith in our institutions. I have no faith in the human church as an institution.
Good news. The lawyer on staff does not have faith in our institution.
Yeah, no, none. Zip, zilch, zero. And by the way, I'm counting myself in that human aspect of the church. I can't save the church. I'm just as fallen and fallible as all these other guys out there who are doing this. So Christ is the only way out. I can tell you it's not me. I know that for sure. And it's not any of the other 4 people in this box, or the other 3 people in this box.
And I think what you're talking about brings up such a good point, because I think so often we are trying to figure out what we can do to save the church, right? Like we're always talking about this because, and you see it like the trad wars and people who are like super pro Novus Ordo, and then some people are, you have the Sedivate contests, and all these people, these different people are constantly fighting, and it's like, well, what the hell can I do? Like, what is my vocation? And at the end of the day, our vocation isn't to save the church. Not on a high level thing, but our duty is to be faithful.
Yeah.
It's to be faithful. And it's the same in the church as it is within our country, and to have integrity. Like I think living with integrity, and I thought about that a lot when I was putting together my show too, is like integrated and integrity. They have the same root. And I think that's really important. Like for me, living a life of integrity is so key to living a good life and a faithful life. And so, it's the next years coming up might not look pretty, but the most we can do is be faithful, and God has the rest. He's totally got the rest. And like we can give that to him. We can lay that at his feet in humility, setting aside our pride and our desire for justice and wanting to do all the right things, and all the right things need to happen because that's what would be just. But the reality is we live in this fallen world, and the only thing we have control over is ourselves. And the only thing we have real authority over is our own family. And so the domestica ecclesia is the key to restoring the church in our country the best that we can, and we'll die trying.
Haley, I just read your comment that White Wolf has you blocked. That is so unjust, because he says some of the craziest things, and I've never blocked him. That is so unjust. That is so unjust. Sorry.
Also, Anthony said it's really hard to get on Tim Pool. Well, that's the point. That's why I think we should make it happen.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at Jason.
Anthony, I love talking to you too, man.
Oh, man.
Even with the shade, I like Mark, even with the shade of hair.
I don't know. Is there anything else Connor, you just jumped on here. Was there something you wanted to talk about? Because I don't want to
about like Rwandan genocide.
Yeah.
I feel like we didn't touch on that fully.
Well, so the book that I read was called Tomorrow You and Your Families Will Be Killed. That was the name. That's the title. And I while I'm going to sit here talk to you, I'm going to pull it up so that I get the name of the book correctly. But essentially,
just don't pull up a different book.
No, it was, no, my attempt to be funny was, it'll never happen again. So this was a story about a guy. It wasn't like Hotel Rwanda, where they told the story from just sort of one person's perspective. Basically what this guy is he tells personal stories, about what happened from the perspective of the different, from both survivors and from the perspective of perpetrators. We wish to inform you that tomorrow we will be killed with our families, by Stories from Rwanda by Philip Gurevich. One of the stories is about how these Tutsi people had found a Catholic monastery in Rwanda and had said, we can take refuge here. And the abbot of the monastery went and got on the phone with the Interahamwe and told the Interahamwe that there were Tutsis hiding here and come kill them. So the idea that, well, we're okay because we're religious, we're Catholic, we're members of the church, and therefore we're not going to be like all those bad people out there. You wish it was that simple.
Yeah. Well, no one's safe, and no one's safe from turning on the people they love or they should love.
Well, wasn't that so obvious with the way our church handled COVID?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I can remember that Easter. I had a friend of mine who is an extraordinary minister, and he was delivering the Eucharist. It was like actually one of the only times where you're like a Eucharistic minister is an extraordinary minister actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he was delivering the Eucharist to families. And I remember sitting in our entryway, receiving our Lord after my husband kind of going through the Mass, leading us through the Mass the best he could within his own faculties, and receiving our Lord, standing in my entryway on Easter, and just being like, I cannot believe that this is where our church has left us right now. And it's like devastating to think that that's where we are today. I mean, that like it wasn't just that our institutions on a culture on like within the culture on a secular level just bombed out on us. It was our fathers, our spiritual fathers.
Oh, and in the middle of that, what you're talking about, the Pope published a little letter in L'Osservatore Romano taking the traditional Latin Mass away from millions.
Mm-hmm.
He thought that'd be a good time to do that. So, like I said, I have no faith in the humans in the church. None. And I'm counting myself in this too.
Yeah.
Christ is the only. He is the only way.
He's the only way. Amen.
I think our real problem is that we all believed that our institutions were decent before like the last 5-10 years. The real thing is that the institutions have been well, they were never, I mean, Rob and I probably think this way most, is that our institutions were founded, I mean, except for the church, on Freemasonic and just generally evil grounds, trying to remove the church from its secular authority or from its worldly authority and restricting it to its spiritual authority. And now it proceeds to attempt to remove it from its spiritual authority as well.
Yeah. Well, secularism will kill institutions because our catechism is clear. All authority comes from God.
Well, all
so
our
if you remove God,
secularly.
Yeah, if you remove God, then the only authority that's left is tyranny. That's all you can do.
Anthony, go to bed.
Angela, you brought up that it's very sort of was it you guys were talking about how people believe that they can the elites believe that they can make the decisions of of who should be president. Mm-hmm. You said that it was very aristocratic. Well, the thing is that aristocratic doesn't actually is not about it's about knowledge. It's never been aristocratic's definition is usually something of inherited influence or
that's true.
Or trained influence. So trained to be able to accomplish a certain goal within a certain philosophy. But what happens now is oligarchy. Mm-hmm. Oligarchy is the bad version of aristocracy that Aristotle sets out for us. And it's basically where people just decide that they are the elite with no authority granted to them, and then they decide. Aristocracy is where they have right authority from some means, or usually inherited or trained. I guess you could think like clergy. They're trained for the specific purpose. So in some ways, like the cardinals act as an aristocracy.
It's an aristocracy definitely.
For the church, or and the Pope is kind of the monarch, and the people are a low-level version of republic. But yeah, so generally speaking, monarchy, aristocracy, and republicanism are the three best forms of government, and we currently have tyranny, uh, um, oligarchy, and democracy. Which is
Democracy, yeah.
why they always throw around democracy so much, is because democracy is just mob rule. It doesn't actually mean necessarily a
It's
majority
corruption
rule.
of polity.
It's just mob.
Yeah, and you are 100% correct in that. I agree. And I think people don't even often, because our civics is so bad, they don't understand the difference between a republic and a democracy, right? So like people
Yeah.
genuinely think that we are a democracy, but we're
Or that-
not. We're not
or that
designed
democracy
to
is a
be
good thing.
Yes, and we're not designed to actually be a democracy. We're designed to be a republic. It's just that these institutions, again, going back to like the overarching theme of this entire evening, is like you have other powers that are interfering in this process. And so it's like, what do we do about that? If anything, like what can we do, and how realistic should we be about the state of our country,
So
the
have you
state of our
guys-
union?
Have you guys ever read the Federalist Papers with any sort of closeness or whatever? I know probably
I
you've
think
read
I've
some of them.
read number 10, maybe.
So the whole reason the Electoral College exists is because the founding fathers realized something unique about the presidency. They're like, this is going to be the one political office that the entire country will vote on together. Like usually when we vote for your congressperson, I mean, you have a district that you live in, right? I live in the Houston the Texas 1st Congressional District. You don't get to vote in that election. Only I do. And this amongst the people in this boxes, right? But the presidency of the United States is the one election where all of us get to vote in the same thing. And the founding fathers saw a huge problem with this. And the problem is democracy. They're like, this is a problem. So it came about this understanding that we'll let the states elect the president. And that was the compromise that was reached, because this is the place where power is concentrated in the most central point. And because of that reason, he has the most limited powers. If you actually read the Constitution, Article 2, which establishes the executive branch, is the shortest article of all three articles. For that very reason, they were very concerned about centralization of power. Congress has the most power, but it's diffused amongst all the different senators and representatives. So they felt a little bit better about that. But democracy is actually a huge problem. And if you read the Federalist Papers, they lay out a pretty compelling case for why that is. And so I would,
at this stage, I doubt a nation our size could ever truly be a republic anyways any longer. I mean, we have one representative for 900,000 people or thereabout. I mean, traditionally, republics throughout history have been a city. You know, Venice, Florence, Milan, things like that. I mean, so much smaller. How could one person represent 900,000 people?
right.
Yeah. They did have a lot of republics had larger territories, but they usually were only run, even though they had more territories, they were only run out of the city. But Mark brought up one of the ways that the Constitution sets up as a way to inhibit democracy from coming to be. But another, well, first of all, it's funny that I think there's either laws that are new or people complain about faithless electors, and that's where someone so each state votes, and then the popular vote tells the electors who to vote for. Now, the Electoral College, the whole point of it was so that the electors could then make the decision. If the electors said this is a bad decision for the state or for the country, they could go against the state, the majority vote of that state. And but people complain about the idea of faithless electors, because that's taking away democracy. Well, it's not supposed to be democracy. And then the Senate used to be an aristocracy. They used to be elected by the state governments to go to Washington. But that was removed, I don't know when, maybe 1900s, early 1900s. And so the whole point was that the state representatives, the state government is very much trying to keep the hold of their own power and keep the federal government from growing powerful. So they said, okay, we need to be able to pick our own senators, and those senators that we pick will basically answer to us. So we can say, we don't want you to lose our own power, so vote against this. And that was the general purpose of the Senate. But once it became popular vote, it basically lost its entire purpose in the government. It just basically became a less popular or a what's the word? A harder house to get rid of people. Basically, it's so much easier to get reelected as a senator because you have way less individual voters have so little influence because it's the whole state voting for one person instead of the representatives, where you're electing, you have much more influence per number of people voting. So it's the whole Senate situation is utterly ridiculous and pointless, basically, and it just creates a never-ending whatever. Basically, like, you'll never get people out of office. It's so hard to get people out of office. That's why everyone's like 80 in the Senate, 80 or 70 in the Senate.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it kind of points to that timeless Catholic teaching about this need for subsidiarity, right?
Sure.
And the importance of that local government having more power, like literally flipping everything and making it an inverted, giving the local governments more power than the federal government. I mean, the federal government really is just to give you the bare minimum. It's supposed to be to like give you the bare minimum of like what every state needs to abide by, and then each state gets to make their own laws as supposed to be. But we have it completely inverted, where the federal government has more power over the people than the state governments in a lot of ways, and even in their locales. I mean, yeah, it's just it makes it hard to really live out what an actual republic is and live out this notion of subsidiarity. And that's why even with pro-life work, I tell people all the time, it's like, yeah, you can have as many government programs as you want to try and solve these pro-life issues, whether it's talking about poverty and whatever, anything tangential to pro-life work or directly related. But the reality is that it's really up to the localities to do what needs to be done to end abortion, to support women in need. And we have to be getting involved on a local level with our pregnancy centers and making changes on a state level or in a community to make abortion completely unthinkable. And so this push to always, you have on the left, people always pushing, well, we need to do more. We need to put more money to the government. We need more of our tax dollars to be wasted on all these programs. Because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the government is the most inefficient thing you could possibly go through to get anything done.
I can think of one I can think of one group of human beings that's even more inefficient.
They happen to live in
the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, let me tell you something.
More specific.
I always love how Francis is going to solve global warming and end world hunger. And I'm thinking, assuming there were a human institution that could do that, do you see any evidence that that institution is the Roman Catholic Church? I mean, really? Have you seen any evidence in the last 50 years? Because from what I can tell, we don't even be able to seem to get the simple crap right lately. I don't know how we're going to solve this incredibly complicated problem across, with billions of dollars and billions of human beings across every country on earth, when we don't even seem to be able. Well, should we allow the Roman Church to say the Roman Rite? Gosh, I don't know.
That's a difficult problem.
I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd.
And if we want to be real specific, the Vatican courts are the most incompetent organization within the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
But yeah, one last thing about republics is that most republics historically were not even independent necessarily, truly. They fought wars over who their superior was, either the Pope or the Holy Roman Emperor. They never really were successful in any real sense independently of anybody above them. They needed somebody to be sort of overseeing them, at least nominally.
Angela, I hijacked your show tonight, and I apologize.
That's
but
okay.
It's 8:30, and I gotta crash out because I got a full day tomorrow. But
Yeah.
thanks so much for having me on the show. I know I didn't provide much legal analysis.
That's okay. You've already put out a video for that. So
I kind of just bummed everybody out by just letting you know that your institutions are going to fail you. Have a nice night, everybody.
Well, thanks for coming on for that. Thank you for that ending note. I really appreciate it.
Talk to you guys later. God bless everybody.
See you, Mark.
Bye.
Bye, Mark.
Well, we probably should
such
wrap
a
it up
ray
there.
of sunshine, Mark.
I know. Well, you know what? He's cold and hardened. He works in law. I mean,
In a very rough part of the law too.
I don't think you could remain an optimist at that. So, yeah, doing
No, I
criminal
can't even imagine.
law.
Hey,
so
I'm a pessimistic optimist.
I think this is called a realist.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
was gonna say I think I'm just a realist, which is
Mhm.
probably about how I would describe that. Oh, well, we might as well wrap it up. We're coming up on an hour and a half here. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I guess the only kind of question I still had for you is,
Yeah.
I mean, you know the people that are involved and what's going on with whatever investigation is happening. Is this that organization that they're part of? Is this scaring them or is it energizing them?
Oh my goodness. Well, time will tell. I mean, like I said, I've done sidewalk counseling. I'm a board member for this sidewalk counseling organization, and I do the radio show with the president of the organization. I've known him for 6 years or so now. For most of us, this has really galvanized us, but I would imagine for some sidewalk counselors, I mean, to be honest, the last time I sidewalk counseled, I witnessed somebody OD across the street at a different abortion clinic. It was intense, and that was kind of I was pregnant with Veronica at the time, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of a rough neighborhood. I don't know that I want to keep coming out here. But honestly, I'm like, I told the guy who runs the sidewalk counseling part of the program specifically, I said, if you need someone out there on this day of the week, at this time, you let me know, because I will be out there. I mean, that's just my temperament. And so I think it's really going to depend on the temperament of the people going out there. A lot of them have been going out there for decades. And that's the other thing that I think people forget, especially younger pro-life activists. You're new to the show. Like, you're new to this battle. And I've noticed since the Dobbs decision came down, there are a lot of young people who are really arrogant and condescending to the people who have been doing the work. These people have been out on the sidewalks doing the work for decades, and they're like, this is the future of the pro-life movement is all young people. They're acting like they did this, and they didn't. That's something that's been really irritating to me, and I'm on the younger scale of that. But I know a lot of these people who have dedicated literally their entire lives for the last
many of them
40 or
been
plus
arrested,
years.
spent
Exactly.
time in jail.
I also joke that you're not a real pro-life activist unless you've been in jail. So, like,
now's everyone's chance.
Now's everyone's chance.
It's
But
increasing.
I mean, it's true though. I mean, like, the people that I have the most respect for, it's not because they've been arrested that I suddenly respect them, but because a lot of these people have given so much of themselves and risked it all for the lives of these innocent children. And I think that speaks to their understanding of the urgency of the issue. I think it's really easy to pretend that abortion, like, intellectually, we understand that this is a very bad thing, right? But you don't see it. And so it's really easy to pretend like it's not there. It's really easy to overlook. It's really easy to not be galvanized and passionate about it, because you don't have to look it in the face every day. But like my friend Brian, he's held the remains of aborted babies in his hands. He's buried them. In fact, they're buried in the same cemetery that my sister is buried in. There is no doubt in my mind that abortion is the most egregious human rights issue that we have ever faced in our country. especially in the modern world where we like to pretend we're so enlightened, we're so humanizing. And so, you know, I think for people like me who have that disposition and that gut reaction to just double down because they have such a strong sense of justice, this isn't going to scare them off. It's going to make them double down. But I'm sure that there will be a segment of our sidewalk counselors who will be nervous. And so, but you know what? The timing, the timing actually is really great. If for any of you, I'm just going to make a shameless plug. If any of you wants to support the organization is called Pro-Life Action Ministries. We actually have our annual banquet coming up here on October 3rd. So next Monday. But if you want to send in a donation and support the work that they're doing, highly recommend it. It's the oldest sidewalk counseling organization in the entire country. They were doing
Wow.
40 Days for Life. The second they started 40 Days for Life, we do 40 Days for Life in the dead of like below zero weather, winter, blizzard, and we're still out there on the sidewalks doing this work. These people are extremely dedicated. So I think, you know, the FBI agents, they can come all they want. Minnesotans are pretty hardy. So game on. I mean, that's what I think about it right now. That's just my perspective on it because that's just
You
my
all just
attitude.
heard Angela challenge the FBI personally.
I just it's ridiculous. And honestly, we have lawyers from several different organizations and places that are actually trying to outbid each other in, like, we have pro-life lawyers that we work with. Like, I'm in a lawsuit right now with a group of moms suing the state, suing the attorney general for overturning all those laws and sandbagging the case. So I'm a part of that lawsuit. I won't talk too much about it for that reason. But you know, yeah, we have things in the works, and I just think that it's so ridiculous that we have all these other lawyers that are willing to jump on, and they're like trying to outbid each other. Like, if this goes anywhere, if this issue goes anywhere, we have several lawyers lined up because it's so outrageous. There's no way they would lose the case. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not worried about it.
Good.
Pray, hope, and don't worry.
Indeed.
Pray, hope, and don't worry. And if you want, you can donate to plam.org.
And
So.
subscribe to Integrated with Angela Erickson.
Please do, yeah. if you are new here and you're not already subscribed, make sure you are subscribed to
If you're a
Integrated with Angela
terrible
Erickson.
person and haven't
Hit
subscribed,
the bell. Yeah, exactly. But I don't want to say that to you. I mean, I
that's why
like
I
you.
said it.
If you're watching, I like you. So please subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when I go live. And there will be more of this. I'm hoping to do more Apostles' Creeds in the future. It will be more like this, just a shorter format, and usually in the morning, not right before bedtime. So, yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
Rob, do you guys have anything going on in Avoiding Babylon? I want to give you guys a chance. I know we kind of went through this last night on So You Think You Know the Faith, but give you another chance to sort of promote your work over there with Anthony, and then Connor, you likewise after Rob. Go for it.
I don't remember if we have anything going on next week. Other than Wednesday, you know, we'll have our weekly trivia. So You Think You Know the Faith trivia. I forget if we have any special guests lined up at all, but and then next weekend, not this upcoming weekend, but the weekend after, myself, Anthony, the Trad Men, Robbie Brown, Brick, who's always in our comments. We're all going to be in Steubenville for the opening of Matt Frad's cigar bar. I think it's Chesterton and Company Cigars. So that we're going to do some live show from there, some recordings. Mark is probably going to have to get Anthony out of jail. So it's going to be a great time.
Sorry, I'm like stuck on a comment here. Go ahead. Apparently my thing is, it wants everyone, my webpage wants everybody to subscribe to Avoiding Babylon. All right. All right, Connor, let's hear it. What do you got going on?
Just check out Plotlines. Tomorrow I'll be on with or Darren won't be on with me to review the Rings of Power, the latest episode that's coming out tonight. That's all I need to really advertise for the moment. Thanks for having me on, Angela. I know I dropped in near the end. Hope I
That's
didn't
okay.
I don't know, lessen your podcast.
No, not at all. And Brick, I have to say, I think it's smash that like button. But you can smack it too if you want.
Brick's a real man. He's gonna smack it.
Yeah, you smack that. You smack that bell there too. Oh,
Thanks,
thank you
Haley.
so much. God bless you. Thanks for showing up tonight. And yeah, if you guys have any more questions or follow up, send me a message on Twitter. That's probably the one I'm the most responsive on. But thanks so much again. God bless you guys. And we will see you. I don't know. We'll see you next time. God bless. Oh, where's that?